short on time tonight, just a half-hour show. Let's go ahead and get busy and unveil the latest college football playoff top 25 brought to you by AT&T. Kansas State barely hanging in the rankings, a notch in Texas' favor. Liberty moves up one.
Yeah, Kansas State massive to stay in the top 25. That is Texas's third-ranked win. Had they fallen out, it'd be down to 2. That also has a benefit to Oklahoma State and to Missouri as well, who's trying to hang on for a New Year's Six Bowl invite.
And Tulane, likely to be the highest-ranked team in the group of 5. They've got a chance to win the American Championship against SMU this weekend. Tennessee is at 21. Let's go to the next group. At number 20, Oregon State stays in the mix, Joey, after getting hammered by Oregon.
Yeah, Oregon State stays in, and that's important to the Pac-12. NC State with a big win against North Carolina. Oklahoma State, living dangerously, found a way to beat BYU heading into their Big 12 championship game against Texas.
And Iowa, 10-2 record, despite the fact they've really struggled on offense. And might they be the fly in the ointment by upsetting Michigan in the Big Ten championship game? Seems unlikely, but the Hawkeyes are at number 16. Let's look at the next group of teams, 15 through 11. And at number 15, there's another Pac-12 team, and Louisville, who has Florida State this weekend in the ACC championship game. Kirk slips 4 spots after losing to Kentucky.
Yeah, well, we've talked all year about the job that Arizona's done this year out in a very difficult Pac-12, impressive job there. Louisville still has an opportunity to go out as a big winner, depending on what happens this weekend in Charlotte. LSU sitting right there, Oklahoma. We thought they'd maybe slip in, but could not quite get it done. And just on the outside of the top 10, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, that's a really solid year for the Rebels.
Only 2 losses on the road at Alabama, on the road at Georgia. Let's go into the top 10 now. At number 10, Penn State. Their 2 losses to the 2 powerhouses in the Big Ten. Booger losing on the road at Ohio State and home against Michigan.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But beating Michigan State, and as James Franklin said, setting themselves up to potentially be in a New Year's Six Bowl. Good year, not a great year, because you can't beat Michigan and Ohio State.
Let's look at number 9. Just ahead of the Nittany Lions is Missouri and Eli Drinkwitz. A 10-win season for him and likely off to a New Year's Six Bowl.
Yeah, really important, too, for Kansas State to stay in the top 25 to prop up Missouri's resume. Tennessee also gets back on track this past weekend against Vanderbilt. Another feather in Missouri's cap that gets them 2 ranked wins and a rock-solid 10-win season for Eli Drinkwitz and the Tigers.
And we know that in every set of the rankings so far, the top 8 teams have moved around, but they've been the same teams. That's going to be the case again tonight. So at number 8, Alabama stands firm after escaping at Auburn over the weekend.
Escaping is correct. I'm still trying to figure out what kind of coverage that was Auburn was playing. But Alabama, the ability to win from the 40-yard line after doing everything they could to give the game away, a terrific win as they stay inside the top 8.
Now let's look at number 7, 1 spot ahead of the Crimson Tide. The team that gave Alabama its 1 loss, the Texas Longhorns, still sitting at 7. So, Kirk, that means Ohio State's going to show up soon. But Texas has a great opportunity to win the Big 12 on Saturday.
Yeah, I think everybody thought after Ohio State lost, curious to see where they would end up. I think many thought they'd maybe be behind teams like Texas and Alabama, clearly ahead. And what does this mean for Alabama and Texas if they were to somehow, especially Alabama, if they were somehow upset Georgia? From 8 to the top 4. Texas is at 7. You got Oregon and Washington ahead of them. Would they skyrocket up? So it really sets up for an interesting Sunday, depending on the results on Saturday night.
At the top 4 and the first 2 teams out. Number 6, there's Ohio State. As expected, their lone loss on the road at Michigan. Now, can the Buckeyes stay in position to move up if the right set of circumstances around them unfold? Last year, Kirk, Ohio State was basically the least objectionable option. There's still a world in which, say, the top 3 win, Texas gets upset, and Ohio State might wind up in the same type of situation this year.
Yeah, Ohio State, to me, what they would need is a Texas loss and a Florida State loss to even be in the discussion. Outside of anything like that, they're clearly on the outside looking in.
At number 5, Booger, the Oregon Ducks. Oregon slipping up to number 5. They're up 1 from last week, sort of moving up a spot after the Buckeyes lost.
Yeah, it's not a surprise, guys. The committee has told us all along, even when there were the 3 one-loss teams that we were ranking, Oregon, Texas, and Alabama. Now you add Ohio State. The committee thinks that Oregon is the best one-loss team. And so it's not a surprise that they're in front of Ohio State, still taking that measure as the committee's best one-loss team.
And, of course, Friday night, game that Kirk will call, Oregon and Washington, a rematch for the Pac-12 title. Had a great game in Seattle during the regular season. Then the Huskies won in the waning moments. At number 4, Florida State, undefeated, got by. Tate Rodemaker sort of managed the game, but not a lot of offense, Joey, against the Gators, and they've got Louisville this weekend.
They did find a way to win, and I do believe that Louisville losing last weekend sort of hurts Florida State because that would have been a big chip in their resume if they beat Louisville as a top 10 team. Now I think it sort of leaves the door open for some things to happen, but I would expect if Florida State can beat Louisville for the ACC championship, they should be in sitting at number 4.
At number 3, the Washington Huskies. So Washington's got a little room to play with, and of course a major challenge coming up against the Ducks on Friday night for that Pac-12 championship. So now the question becomes Georgia and Michigan, the last 2 teams left on the board. Michigan with the huge win against Ohio State. They've won at Penn State. Bulldogs had a fight from Georgia Tech, game that Greg saw in person and called on Saturday night. Let's see who number 2 is. Number 2, the Michigan Wolverines moving up a spot after beating Ohio State, and Georgia remains at number 1, 29 consecutive wins, 2-time reigning national champion, headed for the SEC championship game. So Michigan just moves up 1 spot. Georgia holds his spot. Kirk, what's your reaction to that?
My biggest reaction, I'm fine with that. I think Georgia's the best team in the country. I don't have necessarily an issue with that. I don't have an issue with anything. I find it interesting that Florida State, if you're a Florida State fan, you should be very, very excited about these rankings because in my mind, I think Joey or Greg, you mentioned this. If you look behind them, you have Oregon. Oregon, Washington's going to take care of themselves. One's going to be in, one's going to be out. If Oregon wins, you'd think they're going to be able to be in the top 4. If Washington wins, that eliminates Oregon. Ohio State's not going to go anywhere. I find it very hard to imagine, based on these rankings, that if Florida State were to win, even without Jordan Travis, that Texas or Alabama has a chance to go by them. So I think based on what we just saw, if you're Florida State, it looks like you're 4 quarters away from controlling your own destiny and securing a spot in the playoff, even without your guy, Jordan Travis.
You know what? You look at some of these numbers, too, and there's not much difference between Florida State and Oregon in terms of strength of schedule. They both coming into these rankings. Some of it might adjust a little bit. They both had the same number of wins against teams ranked by the College Football Playoff Committee. So Florida State, I still think they need to look good.
Right.
You know, they need to, probably look a little better. Hostile environment Saturday night, really good win. Rodemaker another week to get comfortable. But I agree with Kirk. They're probably in a pretty good shot.
I think they're perfectly fine. They win, they're in. We don't even need to entertain the idea of a one-loss team potentially jumping them a la Texas and Alabama. Florida State's in. They're going to take care of business this weekend. They're going to be in. They deserve to be because the results have to matter. They're undefeated. And it's not like they've played a schedule comparable to that of Liberty.
What about what? I was going to say, I think if you think they're the best, remember, Greg, I know you like the resumes, but remember, do you think they're one of the best without Jordan Travis? That if people think they're the best, then that's great. I don't care. The resume is what it is. When you watch them, are they better than Texas? Are they better than Alabama? Are they better than Ohio State without Jordan Travis? That's what this is about. It's not, hey, they're undefeated. Right. They should go in. It's not that at all. Are they the best?
Well, the resumes are similar, and they've proven to be the best. The exception would be Texas' strength of schedule is about 40 spots higher than Florida State.
And the reason I said it sort of opens the door for some question marks. Let's just say Alabama beats Georgia. Let's just say Texas blows out Oklahoma State. There is a conversation to be had because then what do you do with Georgia? What do you do with Alabama? What do you do with Texas? I'm not saying that they jump Florida State. I can't imagine at this stage that Georgia moves very far. We just saw Ohio State move down, 4 spots? So there are some question marks in there. I agree with Kirk's thinking in Do you think they beat these teams head-to-head, regardless of what their record is right now? Do you think they beat these teams head-to-head without Jordan Travis?
Yeah, let me ask Booger this question. Booger, are we being a little too myopic and saying it's just Florida State? Because, look, I think I have Michigan as preseason #1 team in the country, but their resume in terms of ranked wins, strength of schedule, all of that is not different from Oregon's and Florida State's, not appreciably different anyway.
No, you know what, Rece, you're right, it's not different, but we've looked at Michigan all along, and based on the eye test and what we've seen from Michigan and their win against Ohio State, you can determine Michigan is one of the 2 best teams in the country at the top, along with Georgia. I think the issue right now with Florida State is we're looking and trying to figure out from a selfish standpoint how we can get the best matchup. Let's face it, if Florida State beats Louisville, regardless whether it's about 1 point or 20 points, they're going to get into the playoffs. I'll tell you something that really jumps out to me, guys, is that Alabama, even if they win the SEC championship game, they're not a shoo-in. They need some help. And I think that's the one thing that a lot of people can't fathom. The SEC champion, Alabama, 12-1, they still need help to get in based on being at number 8 right now. It's a long way to the top 4.